Hello. That's right. Yeah, not allowed to use our. Yeah, we haven't gotten our bumper music, or what do you call it? Intro music yet.
Yeah, that's right. The dang copyrights.
Yeah, stupid copyright.
That's right. But hey, everybody, this is the Jimmy Doan Show.
Are we on Jimmy Doan now?
I believe we are. We're on this crazy George Elmore guy's page.
Okay, that's fine. That works.
Yeah. So, but here we are, and so we don't have bumper music, folks, but we do have a live page and a little.
And that means that you can type in questions.
Yes, and we can see.
If Javier or if anybody else or Gene or anybody's watching, they can type in and say, "Whoa, hey, I see you."
Yeah, you might want to put that on quiet there because it may ring every time somebody chimes in. So anyway, today is the 31st of
Halloween.
That's right, October.
Halloween.
2018. That's right. So. We do this show twice a week these days, ladies and gentlemen, 4 o'clock on Wednesdays and Sundays. We haven't quite found a home for our streaming yet. This is where we are today.
Yes, and let us know if you see the stream. Give us a note, and even if you see it later, who cares? We don't care.
That's right. So,
all right. Well, there's a bunch of stuff today.
What's happening?
What's happening? Well, what's happening today is trivial, and some of it has been extensively talked about. I got some stuff from Scott Adams, and I got some stuff from Shapiro. As we speak, earlier today he had
Hey, Gene's with us.
Okay, Gene, good deal, Gene. And so Shapiro had an extensive thing today on what the rhetoric,
right,
and what people were doing and so forth. And of course, what was so funny was the people that are the most accusative are the ones that are the most. Talk about projection. I mean, these people are off the deep. He was talking about, like, for instance, Don Lemon that said. In the same sentence,
all white people must die.
Right, and all white people must die, but there is
we will not criticize people for
right, exactly, for saying anything. That's right. Oh my God,
I saw it's ridiculous. So from my perspective, that statement was the last bit of journalistic integrity being snuffed out of the universe.
Oh, exactly, right.
It was the end of an era. I am not going to refer to the MSM as the mainstream media anymore.
You're not?
No, they're just not. They're not mainstream anymore. They're in tabloidville.
Okay.
Right. All of those people.
As he said, as what's his name said, it's all about the ratings. And I've talked about this. I've talked about this for years. If it bleeds, it leads.
Well, of course, and it always has been that way. But now it's just gone completely off the rails. I mean, now, look, I don't know.
Hyperbole is beyond belief.
Well, it
gives hyperbole a bad name.
It totally does. I mean, there's nothing that from my perspective, they're just people. It's like the Onion, as far as I'm concerned, at this point.
Good point.
They just go off, and I mean, everything that the quote unquote news people are saying these days, it just sounds like their opinion now.
Well, and it is. That's the whole point. What's fascinating and what's troubling, of course, and people are right about this, is now you trust nobody.
Well, that's not exactly true.
No.
I mean, you
trust me.
Well, right. Well, look, what we do now is you hunt around for it. I mean, I go to Yahoo and I'll start to click. Well, I know. Look, it connects you to everywhere. Right, is the point.
Right,
so what you do is you take a little sampling from here and from there.
We'll talk about some of these.
Well, and then you sort of you try to guess as to which things are more accurate than the others, and
guess.
Well, that's all you can do. You sort of amalgamate the information.
Not unless they're out in your front yard.
Well, yeah. I mean,
then you have actual, what actually happened.
Right.
The videos and so forth.
Well, and that's
even
another way that you get the information. You go to Twitter or Facebook and you watch people's videos of the events and stuff like that. That's the real reporting. Yeah. You're not seeing a reporter on the ground in Oregon talking about the Antifa.
Well, what's fascinating is when they talk about the rhetoric, this and the other, and the CNN people especially are talking about how horrible the Republicans are, and of course you only have to pull up the last 47 videos of Trump people leaving peacefully the Trump rally and being beat to shit. And you wonder, wait a minute.
Well,
Okay, whatever. Okay.
Yeah,
let me move on.
okay.
Unless you got something else to say.
No, it's just from my perspective, it's just I'm at this point. I know when somebody says the media says this or whatever. To me, that's just one guy.
It's the media saying
yeah,
this.
that's right. Well, whatever. It's still
Media are plural or whatever.
Well, that's why I said it's one guy.
Oh, right. Okay, good. Yes. Yes, you did it.
So the point is that it's just the reporting. How do you get reporting? You go to financial news or something. That's
Some of that stuff that's right. Or, believe it or not, you can actually go over to BBC.
Well, I have done that.
I've done that as well.
Rooted out
They have their view on things, and I listen to them almost every day.
Right. There's a great website that has like all the world's newspapers on it.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know
kind of
that.
neat. It's got all the headlines. It's called like news headline, and it's got their front pages. That's what it is. And then you
Are
can
they
click
in like
on
foreign languages and stuff?
Yeah, it's just
okay.
straight off of the.
In case you haven't done it. Okay, I'm going to move on here.
Okay.
Python, in case you're interested, joins the movement to dump offensive master-slave terms. Now, Python is a programming language.
Okay.
And what you have in Python is you have masters and slaves, depending on. They call them masters and slaves. Like when you have a master, then you have slaves underneath it. In the Python program,
Okay.
go to this,
Right.
don't do
It's
this.
the jargon.
It's the go to, the if then, and these are called. The ones that are underneath the masters are called slaves, and then they can refer back to the masters. I mean, this is normal. If anybody's ever programmed in BASIC or anything like that,
Right.
they have go to, if then, whatever. And this is one of the magics about programming is that you can branch.
Right.
So the branching. Now the Python creator Guido van Rossum has retired as benevolent dictator for life in July. But I love this part. Michael Corleone, in The Godfather 3, has been pulled back to resolve a debate about politically incorrect language. And so what they want to do is they want to change master and slave to parent and worker, or something anodyne. I don't know. For diversity reasons, it would be nice to avoid master and slave terminology, which can be
Wait,
associated.
for what purposes?
It avoids slavery, huh?
For what is the beginning of that sentence? It said for diversity purposes?
Yes. Here, Warfare had published a 4-poll request seeking to change master and slave in Python documentation and code terms like parent, worker, or something similarly to those code terms like parent and worker. For diversity reasons, it would be nice to avoid master and slave terminology, which can be associated with slavery, he explained, noting that there have been complaints. They've been filed privately, presumably to avoid being dragged into a fractious war or whatever. So they switched to parent and child. Now, guess what? Woo!
Yeah, the parent.
I find the new terms offensive.
That's right, yeah.
That imply that children are the property of their parents and must do whatever the parent commands. Children or a child is an independent, sovereign, blah, blah, blah. Further, this changes offense to orphans. Finally. In a world that is running out of resources, this pro-reproduction nonsense must stop. You can't ever get it right. I mean, no matter what you do, somebody comes out and says, "No way, Jose." This is hysterical. What can I say? In the 1700s, there was a guy named Bowdler who decided to Bowdlerize all of these Shakespearean plays and take all the. And that was bad enough. People even then hooted at it, and nobody ever did it. And the simple fact is, if you're a 12th grader, 11th or 12th grader in a play, on the stage you use the Shakespearean words. End of story.
Yeah. What's interesting is that these people don't recognize that by having the terms master and slave in the programming, they're actually changing the lexicon. That is to say, master and slave in certain circles now no longer refers to master and slave from
Now it's a parent and child.
Well, no. What I'm getting at is the master-slave language, before they changed it, was helping to change the perception of master and slave into something it was becoming programming language instead of a reference.
Right, and
to
it was
historical
exactly
past.
right. And think about it. Python was not invented until, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. And I guess the question I would have is, were there a lot of people reporting to psychologists or psychiatrists for the damage that they had
You don't hear about them.
incurred because
They jumped off the bridge there in Oakland.
they were exposed to the nasty programming?
That's it. Yeah, I'm going. This is it. Okay, and along.
We got Cousin Bill.
All right. Yes. Good to see Cousin Bill. So anyway, the next thing is a Kentucky man has sparked an outrage after a picture emerged online of him and his, him and his 5-year-old son sporting particularly inappropriate Halloween costumes.
Oh, Jesus.
No, seriously.
Oh, I got something on this.
Do you? You have something on this?
Well, yeah. Well, generally speaking,
It was he was. Let's see. The father said, "Didn't occur to me that this would be offensive." He was dressed up as. Let me just think now. He was dressed up like as Hitler, and his son was dressed up as Goebbels, or the other way around.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever it was. Gee, it didn't occur to me that might be offensive. And of course, what's interesting is in Germany that I'm sure that would have been jail time.
Yeah, for sure.
But not here, and of course everybody was offended. And I'm thinking, let me think about it for a second. If you go to the front door dressed as a Hitler, let's say, my guess is that 85% of the people would think it's a uniform.
Wait, you got a little
Because
you mean they're not going to recognize it?
no, that's what I'm saying.
Oh.
These people are born in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. They don't understand.
Yeah,
But
it's
even
still
if you do,
pretty
it's like, who cares?
Yeah, well, that's what I was
I
going to
mean,
get at.
hey, you think about Fun Time in Hitler, one of the plays that was out there.
Right.
And I mean, and of course, the Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin had a movie on this kind of stuff where he parodied the whole thing. And this was 50, 60 years ago. Get over it.
All right. I'm gonna totally agree with you on this. Here's my thought: if you are an adult and you are offended by a Halloween costume, I have zero sympathy for you. I have no sympathy for you. Seriously, grow up. I mean, seriously, this is
Halloween.
It is a kid's holiday, okay? And let's be clear, okay? The point of the thing, it actually has a very good purpose. The surface point of it, though, is scariness. And
what's scarier than Hitler?
Exactly. The whole point is, well, look, what's the worst thing you can possibly imagine in your mind? What is it? What? Okay. How bad is that? I mean, how you know, it's just
Trick or treat.
Right. Look, and to me, this is it's a fantastic holiday. This is a holiday that teaches kids the difference between reality and fantasy.
We have had, let me just, as you well know, starting with the Tunnel o' Terror.
Oh yeah.
And the Tunnel o' Terror, which did this over at Ms. Jimmy's house as well. And what we would do is we would hang this giant spider up in the tree.
Right.
And when kids would come up, we would drop it down.
Well, no, the spider was just the piece de resistance. That was just the ending thing. What would happen? What we did is I would jump out and sort of trap them in the little area where the door is,
right?
Sort of foyer, and then when I would leave, they would immediately try to run away, and that's when you drop the spider on them.
Right.
Back in the middle of their path there.
Well,
but this is a rite of passage.
Totally.
That you have to.
And
do
the
this.
parents are in the yard, out in the street, laughing their heads off.
Look, and the reason for this is this helps kids transition from what they think is scary, and they get to see what they think is scary is really not scary at all. It doesn't even exist.
It has to do with reality and not reality.
Exactly.
The simple fact is Halloween is not reality.
Exactly. So if you look at the, I feel, like Megan Kelly. I mean, obviously they wanted her out anyway.
Right.
And some other poor girl just got fired because she dressed up as her favorite Napoleon Dynamite character. But
oh my God.
You got to figure, look, in 100 years, hopefully this won't be a problem anymore. And if that's the case, and when I say this, I mean stuff like,
well, in 100 years I'll be robots anyway.
Right. The robots will talk about those stupid humans.
Stupid humans.
But the only way we're going to ever get to that point is if people start to get over it at some point. You just
It's a
have
tough
to,
call because one of the and we've talked about
look,
this
the
before.
people who dress up in blackface have no idea who Jim Crow was,
Right.
And the Jumbly, whatever, all that stuff. No, they don't know. They're doing it because they want to dress up as that character. And when you dress up as a character for Halloween, you're honoring that thing. You're not dressing up as something that you hate most of the time.
Good point. I hadn't thought about that, but you're exactly correct.
You know, especially if you're a kid, you're not doing that.
You're 7 years
Right,
old.
right. So from my perspective, Halloween costumes can be bad, like they can suck, but they can't be offensive. I mean, if you're offended by a Halloween costume, just get over it.
Yeah, you got a real problem.
Yeah.
Okay, throw candy at them.
Seriously.
Razor blades.
Yeah, exactly.
Here, I'm sorry. These are the kids that I don't like. Hey, honey, get the bag out with the apples and the razor blades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. Okay, so anyway, what I thought was interesting. Now, one of the big deals, and I only got a very short thing on this. The big deal this week was the shooting in Pittsburgh.
Yes,
Very bad.
of course.
And there are two things that I thought were interesting. One, Gab, is an alternative to. Is it Facebook or Facebook? Gab is a new thing that has come up because Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are banning people that are conservative, so to speak. I mean, that's the assumption.
Right.
So this place called Gab has come up, and you can basically do anything. And apparently, at least one of these fellows, either the bomber or the other guy, posted on Gab a lot.
Okay.
Gab has been banned by PayPal, GoDaddy, and they had a site on GoDaddy. Medium suspended by 2 other platforms. In other words, what happened is, interestingly enough, this is 2 things. One, the private sector has decided to ban another private sector thing because of the offensiveness of Gab. Because Gab doesn't limit people, so to speak. Good news and bad news, I guess. Because there are people that are saying that what's on Gab apparently is I have not been on. You can't get on Gab anymore, I don't think. But apparently they're going down the toilet because they can't get any money anymore. I don't know what the deal is. In the wake of the worst anti-Semitic massacre in U.S. history, which I find interesting, there were 12 people killed, and this, of course, compares very favorably to the 6 million people that were destroyed in Germany. Okay, lives of 11 people. Synagogue, 5 technology companies, PayPal, GoDaddy, Medium, Stripe, and Joyent, have taken action against the social network platform Gab. It's interesting in a way. There's 2 things to consider. One is Gab apparently was a competitor, so they've decided the competitor must go, and there are people that are saying that if you want to post stuff, a lot of conservative people, for instance, people that are legitimately conservative, like the Mises Institute or someplace like that. Apparently, I don't know if it's them, but some other people like that are nondescript conservatives, so to speak, have been taken off some of the or resigned to someplace lesser on these platforms. So now we want to have a new platform,
Right.
and now the PayPal especially has decided that they want to shut down that platform. In other words, a platform that's an alternative.
These are private companies
Yes.
that are banning or limiting other private companies' access.
Right.
And if the market is really there for
Right.
Gab,
Right.
then it'll overcome anything
You're right.
that
No,
they'll put in their way.
you're right. I'm with you on that. It may take a week or 2.
Well, it may take a year or 2 or 5 years or something,
Yeah.
but I cannot imagine that if there is actual systemic bias within, say, Google search terms or the YouTube video universe, and certain voices are being excluded, they will find another platform.
And it's interesting you should mention that, because a lot of them are setting up independent websites, and these people have got 1 million followers. Mm-hmm. So they've done a blast email and said, okay, you can't find me on YouTube anymore, but you can come to my website. Mm-hmm. And do a like or whatever the hell it is. And I don't know how the Google search engine can exclude those people. Oh, I tell you what it is. A lot of people are going to DuckDuckGo, mm-hmm. which is anonymous. And it's amazing how many people are running over to DuckDuckGo. So anyway, we'll see. Okay, next item. China's first attempt to reach orbit via a private launch company failed. I thought this was fascinating. Private company, China, rocket, what? I mean, now it didn't. It actually made it to the third stage.
Okay.
I mean, the first two stages, I think, went just fine, and they considered it a success because it got within shooting range, so to speak, of orbit. And you know, they have the name here in Chinese or whatever.
So what are you curious about? The fact
I'm curious about the fact that it was a private company. I mean, think about it. In this country, if you had wanted to launch a private rocket satellite 20 years ago, they would have shut you down.
Sure. So why do they allow that in China?
Right.
Well, because it's not actually private. What they did, I'm sure, is they probably co-opted it, or they probably partnered. They probably look. I gotta believe, the people probably were putting together the rockets. China, the government finds out about it. They're like, hey, we want you to do this for us. It starts off as a friendly relationship, and then after a while,
I'm from the government, and I'm here to help
that's
you.
it. And so, if look, there is no question in my mind that the company does not have.
They had to have a license.
Exactly.
They had to have a license.
Of course they did.
That's right. Anyway, they were going to continue to move forward and so forth, and it was carrying a satellite that would have broadcast a television series called Cheers Science, which happens to be a Chinese government type indoctrination propaganda show. It's like Sesame Street for the I don't know, for something. You know, Sesame Street for people that don't understand propaganda or something. I don't know. Okay, moving along.
Gene says that he has a Gab account.
Really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
But Gab gives you the tools to do your own censoring if you want.
Cool. Oh, well, you would expect Gene to have this. Now, of course, you do understand that where he is, it's frozen snow territory.
Yeah, I know.
I got a picture of him in his snowmobile. I mean, think about it. This is still October, and he's in snow.
Right.
I hate to think what his place is going to look. He won't be able to get out of his house in another month. So anyway, he's our dear friend who's been on before. Okay, on Friday, the Wall Street Journal reported that the Federal Bureau of Investigation is deep. And it's interesting. They put it in parentheses FBI.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know who that was. Is deepening criminal probe into whether Tesla misstated information about production of its Model 3 sedans and misled investors about the company's business going back to 2017.
Yeah, we brought this up last
I know we did.
Okay.
What I'm curious to know is, and I don't know if we discussed it in detail, but what's the FBI doing in this? I mean, the SEC I understand, but the FBI?
Well, it's. I'm sure they're probing whether or not he's broken some federal criminal statute.
Well, what it says here, according to the Wall Street Journal, FBI agents have been reaching out to former Tesla employees in recent weeks to ask if they'd be willing to testify. Well, in what? I mean, here's some money.
Look, here's what's happened. The magnifying glass has been turned on him.
Yeah.
And so they're looking now. So they're going to poke around and we'll see. And like I said before, the problem with that is that fraud and misleading are very vague terms. For example, let's say you put on an advertisement for your company, a corporate advertisement.
Here's the deal. No offense, but almost every television ad from here's the miracle scraper. We can do this. We can do that. I mean, and when you get it, it takes like 6 weeks.
It's not a miracle at all.
No, it takes like 6 weeks before you stop cutting your fingers if you want to get it right. I mean, these guys are
Well, and this is a guy who has received billions of dollars in federal
money. That's right. Okay, there's where it is, and it's still, and I think the subsidy on the Model 3s runs out here in a month or two.
Yeah, something like that. And they've announced a new Model 3, I guess, with some slash prices, a redone interior and such. But we'll see.
It's wicker.
It's wicker?
Yeah, the interior is wicker.
Oh, right.
It's woven by Mexicans. They used to weave the hats, the white hats, what do they call those hats that Mexicans wear? Come on, George.
Bolero?
Jimmy. No, it's not a bolero. It's a regular Panama hat. The people who do the Panama hats are doing the seats for the car. Okay. This is interesting. Next item. Dateline Cairo, Egypt. Egypt's police are stepping in to fight. This is, shades of Venezuela on the other side. Egypt's police are stepping in to fight a potato shortage that caused prices for the staple to soar beyond the reach of many at a time when Egyptians are struggling with steadily rising food costs. Now, it says in here that a potato used to cost, or bag or whatever it was, a pound or liter or whatever it was of potatoes, used to be like 17 cents, went to 87 cents. Panic City. Potatoes, okay? Reminds me a little bit of the Irish potato famine in a way.
Right.
Pro-government newspapers and TV stations have been publicizing raids on warehouses where authorities say businessmen are hoarding potatoes to try to drive up prices. Now this is a story that happened here during the Depression when they decided to plow pigs and everything under the thing because they were supposedly holding back corn and pigs and everything in order to raise the prices, which of course it doesn't actually work that way. The raids have showcased the lengths to which authorities, people with guns, are willing to go to prevent popular discontent from boiling over as they impose a raft of austerity measures intended to reform the economy. Now, this, once again, the government is stepping in and deciding, we know what's best. We are going to make the economy better. And one of the ways we're going to make the economy better.
Why'd they let it get bad in the first place?
Well, of course. I mean, yeah. So for the first time, the Interior Ministry, by the way, who runs the police, it has begun selling potatoes at reduced prices. What they do is they raid these, and now they sell the potatoes in order to make. So the people come in like any place. This is like a welfare system, okay, where they come in. You want potatoes at 17 cents? We have. I'm sorry, that warehouse has just been emptied out by our soldiers, and so the move mirrors what the military has done for years, selling food from trucks deployed across the country. I mean, this is a government appreciation room meme. The shortage comes at a delicate time, with Egyptians bracing for a new round of price hikes early this year. Many expect fuel prices to rise again, which would have an effect on everything else, which it would. I mean, there's no question that there is a ripple effect that goes through the whole economy. But what's fascinating is when you try and hold down the price on one item, that has a ripple effect.
Did they say why the price had increased?
Let's see. Oh, yes. Many farmers have appeared to avoid planting potatoes this year because their previous year's harvest was sold at a loss due to higher production costs. Before the shortage, a kilogram cost of 11 cents and then rocketed to 84 cents at the peak of the shortage last week. A tough message has been sent out that the government will not stand idly by while hoarding basic items is being done, says the agriculture minister. We are not saying that merchants should not turn a profit. We're just saying that the profit must be fair. Okay. The whole point is meddling never works out.
Wait, so what you're saying is that the farmers misallocated the planting.
Yes.
And then they came up with a shortage.
Right.
And then that drove up the price.
Right.
Okay. And of course, if the price were paid, that would encourage farmers to get back in.
Right, exactly. And next year's crop would be.
But the government's going to prevent them from collecting that price.
Yep.
Because it's too much.
Right, and so they have guaranteed a shortage for next year.
Pretty much.
I mean, guaranteed. Seriously. I mean, you think about it. If you're going to rob the people that actually produce the potatoes at a profit, so to speak, that a profit not at 17 cents, but maybe at 27 cents or 41 cents or whatever, or 87 as the case was, then who would have? All the farmers who dropped out would have dropped back in.
Right. Well, you would think, but
you would know. I mean, there's no think about it. I mean, people go where the shortages are. I mean, look. The bottom line is this is what happened. I will never forget. This is what happened to Apple Computer. Apple was making, when they first came out with the Apple II or Apple II Plus or whatever it was. I mean, I was in the business then. They were making 40% profit. 40%, and we as a dealer were making 40%. I mean, I don't know what these things cost, but they must have cost Apple like I don't know $300-400. And then we were buying them from Apple at $1,100, and we were selling them at $2,200. And it took about a year and a half before everybody else chimed in because this was just too. That's what profits do is to, as we've talked about, profits tell you where the money is.
Well, and then they reallocate resources.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, suddenly IBM PCs, blah blah blah, the whole nine. Compaq comes up, and then there was a whole raft of companies that you never heard of yet anymore that also put the same stuff out at low prices. So anyway, it's kind of fun. Okay, moving on. The leaders of a progressive Jewish organization, progressive is the word, said President Donald Trump should not visit the city as it mourns the 11 people murdered in a mass shooting. So I thought it was interesting. President Trump, you are not welcome in Pittsburgh until you fully denounce white nationalism. So
not fully enough.
No, not fully enough. You. I mean, I don't know if you watched Mrs. Jane, of course, Mrs. Jimmy, excuse me, watches the Trump. She's a Trump Kool-Aid drinker, so she watches all the rallies. And he was explicit for 10 minutes on how horrible this was and how we're going to get him and kill him.
Not fully enough.
Not fully enough, right. For the past 3 years, your words and policies have emboldened a growing white nationalist movement. You yourself called the murderer evil, but yesterday's violence is the direct culmination of your influence. As I said, he could. It doesn't matter what happens. If there's a tornado in Idaho,
That's just politics.
I know it is. But it's a Jewish group, rabbi, somebody, But it says the group.
They
the group said what?
They don't speak for the.
No, I know they don't. But it made the news.
Well, yeah, but the news. Look, it's the news you're talking about there.
It's true. Yeah, you're right. The organization also demanded that Trump, quote, stop targeting and endangering all minorities, unquote. And,
clearly he's.
Cease your assault on immigrants and refugees. Commit yourself to compassionate democratic policies that recognize the dignity of all. This is, and people eat this stuff up.
Well, it sounds good.
Yeah, right.
I mean, seriously, if you just on its face recognize the dignity, oh sure, of course you should do that.
Okay, I've got two more things here about, let's see, I got something about our local candidate, Andrew Gillum. I don't know if I'm going to do that. And then I've got 62% of jobs don't support middle class life after accounting for the cost. And there's a reason for that. I wanted to chit chat about it. But here's the one thing is that the media, as we just talked about, to dovetail into this, the media itself blame Trump for motivating the bomber. President Trump and Republicans drew harsh media criticism, linking them to the actions of persons who mail homemade bombs to Trump critics. Thankfully, federal law enforcement tracked them all down. There wasn't enough for CNN. Anchor Anderson Cooper said the president was, quote, speaking quite hypocritically, unquote. Cooper blasted Trump for not naming the intended victims of the bomber. He gave no names, nothing to indicate that he sees as individual human beings and distinguished from former public services. I mean, the idea is to name the victims.
He did not fully enough praise or condemn the firebombing. Look, like you said, it's Anderson Cooper. I mean,
right. Well, it's like Don Lemon, of course. If you listen to Shapiro, he takes Don Lemon to task today.
I can't imagine that these guys are going to have platforms for too much longer.
Boy, seriously. And Krugman was another one who came out in his column. And Shapiro talked about that as well, and I'll get it from Tom Woods. Tom Woods and Murphy have a column, a podcast every week, about Contra Krugman, they call it. Contra.
Right.
And it's really, you can bet they're gonna go in on this one. Anyway, so moving on. President Donald Trump's proposal to use an executive order. This has to do to deny birthright citizenship to non-citizens and undocumented immigrants has virtually no support from legal experts across the political spectrum. So what do you think?
It's a scientific consensus that look, here's what it comes down to. The whole citizenship birthright thing should not be that big of a deal. But it is because the socialists have read a bunch of property rights into the citizenship. That is to say, now, if you're a citizen, you get stuff. You get property. It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're just entitled to money, education, housing, welfare, benefits, all those kinds of things you're going to get. So that's why it's super important now whether or not you're a citizen. Before all those benefits, the concept is just, are you allowed to be here? That's what the concept of citizenship should be. It's, are we going to kick you out, or are we going to let you live the way you want to live?
Well, the thing is, though, everybody's talking about the problem that he's got with his executive order is it goes against the 14th Amendment.
Well,
All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside.
there's a legal argument that the clause subject to the jurisdiction thereof
Right.
is a limiting clause, which means that if you're here illegally and you are not subject to the jurisdiction of the laws, or if you're a member of a nation or a tribe or something like that, or an invading army, and you're not subjecting yourself willfully to the laws of the jurisdiction, then it doesn't count. I tend to disagree with that. I think
You disagree with the Constitution?
no, I disagree with that interpretation of the 14th Amendment. I do think it means if you're born here, you're in. But
Even okay, so and this is the big hoorah. If you are from, I don't know, Swaziland, you and your wife, and you show up on the border and you pop a kid out, the kid is a citizen.
right. And what that means is, or what it should mean, is that we're not going to seek to deport that child, and that the child can
Even
live,
when the child is 24 years old.
right, or whatever. And so, and the child is free to live and enjoy the fruits of his life as you know, as anybody.
Somebody said there are, I read the thing, he said we're the only country, and that's a lie. The simple fact is there are 30 other countries that, quote, have sort of birthright citizenship. But it's not really the same. It's real restrictive.
The difference is,
I think there's only one or two countries. I could be wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. Google it. But I think there's only a couple of other countries that actually, if you drop your baby in the border, that you become a citizen. But I think that there's some other. If you do, then you have to go through some hoops.
well, look, again, what it comes down to is not so much the definition of whether you're a citizen of this country or that country, but whether they'll let you stay. That is to say, you can go and seek asylum. You can be
Asylum is one thing.
and in a lot of countries, and then you can stay, and then you can pursue your life there unabated. Now you're not given things, though. That's
Right.
the big issue. The reason it's such a big issue is because here you're given stuff,
And when
people,
you think that the giving stuff, as far as the United States budget is concerned, it's 66% of the budget is the giving stuff.
right, and so and there's I would say, I mean, obviously there's local and state
Right.
as well.
Right. If you happen to be in California,
So
you can go live on that street all by yourself.
yeah, so it's unfortunate that we now have people have recreated this concept of a right to the acquisition of property.
Right.
Versus
That's correct.
right, and it's weird that they've done that. But because they've done that, now it's super important whether or not.
Well, the problem that people will talk about when they talk about rights is they fail to understand that, first of all, government-given rights can be taken away. Number one, they're not really rights. A right is because you're a human.
Well, no, I would disagree
Right.
there.
When they say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, life, you have a right to life, and you can defend that, and liberty, you can defend that, and pursuit of happiness, you can defend that. But everybody has that. Everybody has that.
Well, right, but the governments are instituted in order to protect those rights.
But not impinge on them.
No. And of course, our main rights are prohibitions against government action.
Totally.
But like I said, what's happened now has been there's been this inversion recently.
Right.
The
Socialists not starting with, but the most recent one, of course, is the mandate, the individual mandate and the health care when you must pay.
Right. Well, yeah, that's.
however that became a tax was beyond me. Anyway, not.
Well, this is
That's another thing, right?
Shell game.
Shell game, right?
But so we'll see. It can't last. At some point, we have to get back to the point that you can't be entitled to other people's property.
Right. That's exactly right. And of course, once you are, that's thievery. I mean, Jesse James thought he was entitled to, the railroad property.
Right.
So.
Oh, thanks, Gene. Yeah, I know. He said I need a shot of Uncle Howard's for my cough.
Yes, exactly.
I don't know where that cough came from.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's right. Good old Uncle Howard. Okay, now here's another thing that is kind of ongoing. In Newark, New Jersey, a great state, for nearly a year and a half, top officials in Newark denied that their water system, a year and a half now, denied their water system had widespread lead problem, despite ample evidence that the city was facing a public health crisis that had echoes of Flint, Michigan. Okay, we'll talk about that. What is interesting is even as the risk persisted, the officials in Newark said, quote, Newark's water is absolutely safe to drink. But this month, facing results from a new study, the officials abruptly changed course and beginning an urgent giveaway of 40,000 water filters across the city of 285,000, targeting tens of thousands of residents. Officials were finally compelled to act after an engineering study commissioned by the city found that measures to prevent lead leaching into print water were failing in the plant. So what they've done is what they did in Flint to some extent. They brought in at taxpayer expense, bottled water, and they're handing away all the. I saw a picture of these people coming out with the water filters that they would hitch up, I guess, to their thing or their spigot.
Mm-hmm.
They should probably do a little Google search or not an Amazon search or something on the effectiveness. The ones that they had in the picture, not so much. I mean, I can tell you from personal experience. I've got one here now called Zero Water. What they do is they give you a little thing to measure the.
Yeah, I'm suspicious of the zero tester.
Well, you might be, except let me tell you something.
Uh-huh.
If you get your tap water,
right,
it goes 170, or you get one from the Brita, it does 140.
I know, but we don't know what that's actually measuring.
Well, that could be, but I'm taking
evil.
I'm taking it. That's right. I'm taking it as face value. Anyway, the bottom line though is that the filters, I guess I should call up Consumer Reports and find out. But I was looking at the ones they were dragging out that were given away free, and my guess is they were cheap. So, all right. Moving along, and to one of my last things here. Surprisingly enough, Christine Blasey Ford, the California... Blasey Ford, the California psychology professor, is accused of Supreme Court Justice of sexual misconduct 36 years ago, received a $1 million windfall and is receiving special requests for book deals after her testimony. Now, we talked about this. Mm-hmm. We said, this is it. She went over there, she put all the calumny, all the stuff, the heaping of who knows what on her, and now she's rich.
Heck yeah, man.
Yeah.
What I was listening to somebody said the term, what was it? Competitive victimization or something.
Is that right?
Yeah. It was,
well, I love this part.
She's winning.
Right. Well, this is, of course, but it goes on even after the hearings are over, even after he's been confirmed for a while. Despite Ford's windfall, several Democrats in the Senate Judiciary Committee, including Dick Durbin and Kamala Harris, said Ford had nothing to gain by coming forward with her accusations. And so even after she got $1 million, no, nothing wrong with that. I mean, she had nothing to gain.
Well, there is nothing wrong with that.
No.
Yeah.
It's all voluntary.
Right,
GoFundMe.
Right.
She had two of them. She had one for a foundation or a fund or something. Mm-hmm. But it turns out that Ford and her husband can, quote, can withdraw as much as they want whenever they want for any purpose. Payments would be electronically deposited into the Ford's bank account within 2 to 5 business days of initiating withdrawals, unquote, said the GoFundMe spokesperson. So, okay, well, the question is, would I put up with 4 days of, and I'm thinking, for $1 million?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not like that. I mean, obviously, she has all of the support all of the faculty and staff of the place where she is and everything.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, it's one of these things that this is what happens in the past. It has to, what Scott Adams calls confirmation bias, and that people associate with their own people.
Well, sure.
And as I've said so many times in the 2000 election, when this doyen from New York said, I don't know, how could he have been elected? I don't know anybody that voted for him. And I'm thinking, well, that tells you something. So, who are you associating with? And I talked about this as well with a friend of mine, not a friend of mine, an acquaintance, who was a retired DEA. And he said, people are scum. Well, yeah, but that's who you were dealing with.
Right. So, well, we see, and in the legal profession, you see that sometimes it'll happen to judges. They'll see too many defendants.
Yeah.
And you'll see their personality change.
I
and
believe
their
that.
treatment of alleged criminals become significantly harsher.
Yeah.
But judges, they do a good job, generally speaking. So.
Yes, you want to say that. Yes, you want to say that. Love you, judges.
That's right. So the only thing I've got that you didn't mention is the tropical Trump. The guy Balsonaro or whatever just won in Brazil.
Yes.
Okay, so this guy is apparently a big right-wing guy.
Yeah.
And Brazil has a system that's quite similar to ours in terms of they have a presidency, a bicameral legislature, and an independent judiciary. So it's interesting to me to see what changes he may or may not try to bring or successfully bring, and what impact they may have on Brazil. And Brazil for a long time has been the joke is they say it's the country of the future and always will be. So...
Well, there's a lot of interesting facts about Brazil. First of all, it's Portuguese.
Right.
And it's huge.
Yeah. Massive resources.
Massive resources.
It's a curiosity on some level as to why they're not more of a world power until you look at their economic structure.
Right.
And then you see how...
but in spite of their economic structure, they're pretty powerful. I mean, as far as South America is concerned.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, on the world thing, what are they? Probably 9, 10, 11, 13, something?
Yeah, I would say somewhere around there.
Still pretty good size.
It's good, but it could be significantly better.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at Venezuela. Venezuela was number 1.
Yeah.
And is now number 0. I mean...
So anyway, well, we'll see. I just thought it was interesting, and keep our eyes peeled.
There was another one that happened, and it's interesting you mentioned that because, and maybe I'll bring it up on Sunday. There was one other election recently. I think Angela Merkel she's retiring.
Yes,
and that's going to be a change. But there was one of those other countries over there in Europe that also had a hard swing to the right, and I forget which one it was. I mean, it was I just don't remember right, but
yeah, I don't know,
but Brazil was the big one.
Right. Well, I did see that Austrian court upheld that woman's conviction for blasphemy.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Wait. No. The Pakistani court overruled the Christian woman's blasphemy. In Pakistan, she had the death sentence since 2010.
Oh yeah.
And she was, because for blasphemy, she was a Christian, and she blasphemed the Muhammad. But just recently, the High Court in Pakistan said no and threw it out.
Huh. Well, I saw something a little different from that.
Boy, I was going to say in Austria of all places.
I know. Well, I thought it was interesting.
You sure that wasn't from the Onion?
Maybe so. Who knows?
All right. What are we going to talk about?
But hey, thanks for joining us, everybody.
Yeah.
Gene, and we had Donald chime in, and Carrie joined us, and a few other people. We appreciate it. Obviously.
So this is our 4 o'clock on Wednesdays and Sundays.
Yep.
For now, and if we get the usual 1,000 people showing up, we might even expand it to some other day. You never can tell.
And if you have anything you'd like us to talk about, we'd be happy to do that. Send
us a like, or whatever. And
that's right. Feel free to share the video if you feel like it. And we'll be back on Sunday.
4 o'clock.
At 4 o'clock after the Gator game.
That's right. In the new month.
That's right.
in November.
So happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah, I hope you got your candy.
That's right. So thanks for joining us.